Do you have anything on there that's video clips or anything that I might need to get over here
No.
just in case that doesn't work?
No video clips. Okay. So, most of you guys know the quote, ignorance is bliss, right? So, today I'm going to talk to you about when ignorance is not bliss. So, my novel was Ignorance by Michele Roberts, and I'll tell you a little bit of the background, storyline summary a little bit. It starts off with two girls. One is named Marie, the other one is named Jeanne. Marie is rich, and she's also blonde. It was just also a big thing. Jeanne is poor, and she's a brunette. They grow up together as little girls. They actually meet because Marie's mom takes Jeanne's mother to the hospital because she needs hospital care and they can't pay for it. And so she also decides to take Jeanne in also, and she sends both of the girls to boarding school. And that's where their rifts start. They have the typical things of, I don't like you because you're poor, I hate you because you're rich, you have things I could never have, the typical kind of stereotypes. Now, they also like to get into trouble. It's interesting because Marie is the one that likes to get into trouble, but she likes to blame everything on Jeanne. And one of their biggest and oddest little adventures they have is with this guy called the Mad Hermit. Now, this dude is also extremely creepy in the book. It's a really awkward scene. It's this he's not elderly, but he's an older guy, and he stares at them through his flat window, which is near the boarding school, and watches them while they're in school. And they end up seeing the guy watching them, and so they decide to go over to his house, because why not? And there they find out that he's an artist, and he also has about 6 wives, 7 of them. They're just kind of hidden in his flat elsewhere. And so he's looking at them, he gets pencil and papers out, he starts to draw on them. It's really, really weird. And they decide to leave when he pulls a knife out. That's just what ends up going on. Now we're going to flash forward a couple of years until they're about our age. And World War II has begun. And Marie starts off her part of the book, because this book goes back and forth between Marie's perspective and Jeanne's perspective. And so we start off with Marie's, and she's saying before the war, everything was normal. She works at her father's store. They're in a portion of France right now. And so she works at her father's store. Everything's going fine. She gets all the luxuries she wants. She doesn't have to worry about paying for anything and things like that. But when the war comes, everything changes. Well, in her perspective, it changes. She can't have that awesome pair of leather gloves. She can't buy that fur coat. So she's being a complete whiner. But one day, somebody walks into the store and changes her life completely. And that is Maurice. He is practically the vision of human temptation. He's attractive, got a really awesome car, and he's rich. What more could you ask for? He can give you everything you want. And so basically that's exactly what he does. They spend a ton of time in this car, drinking and smoking. He is the very first person that introduces her to all those kinds of things because he has the money for it. He buys her all of his stuff, and eventually events happen within the car, and months later she's like, hey, by the way, I'm pregnant. And so her mother is outraged, of course. And see, Marie is completely ignorant of why this pregnancy is so awful. And she also hates the fact that her mom and Maurice are like, hey, you can get rid of it if you want to, and stuff like that. But she's like, no, I want to keep the baby. And Maurice is like, okay, I'll help raise it with you. And so meanwhile, while she's pregnant, they discovered that they've had Jews hiding out in their barn of her dad's store. And so Maurice actually says, hey, I'll get like a car type service and transport them back and forth safely. And so they do this for a while, and Marie is kind of toying with the idea. It's like, I know we're supposed to be helping them, but I also don't know if this is right to do because hiding Jews is technically against the law. So she's going back and forth with that. Now, meanwhile, Jeanne has experienced the war a lot differently. Since she's poor, she cannot support herself or her mom, who has gotten out of the hospital, so she becomes a prostitute. And eventually with that, and she ends up getting pregnant with a German soldier's baby. So we have the two girls pretty much pregnant at the exact same time. Marie a little bit earlier than the other. And And so Jeanne is struggling with trying to make a living, and she knows she's forever shamed because she's pregnant with the enemy's baby. And so eventually the two do meet up later in life in little instances. There's a scene where Jeanne is being publicly shamed, where this is the actual thing, I found pictures on it too and I have one, where they would get all the prostitutes out who had had babies from whoever they had sex with, and they would shave their heads and then make them go walk through the street with their baby. And so Marie watches that, and she's struggling with the idea. She's like, I feel bad for what Jeanne's going through, but then I also don't care about her. And so she's having a really big inner struggle. She can't decide if she wants to help her out, and Marie's just like, don't bother. She's not your kind of person. But we learn later in the story that Maurice visited the brothel that Jeanne was working at and did whatever you will with her before he married Marie. But he was still with Marie at the same time. So technically, he was dating both of them at practically the same time. But Marie was also too ignorant to realize that her lover was cheating on her. So that's pretty much the main part of the book. Marie does have her baby, and she has a couple more kids. Jeanne has her baby and gives, it was a girl, and gives her away. Names her Andre because of the Mad Hermit, because they figured out that the Mad Hermit's name later in life, when they met up with him, his name was Andre. So they decided to name that the girl. And then the rest of the book is pretty much from Andre's perspective. And the book, I really enjoyed the book. I think the ending was not so great, and I did read a couple reviews, and they didn't like the ending either, because it pretty much just ends up with Andre being a brat and running away from the orphanage she's at, and it kind of just ends. It's kind of just a random, non-interesting ending. But, so that's pretty much a summary. And so I have a couple points that I want to make. A big thing in this book was the question of why. Why is this happening to me? Why am I not understanding what I'm going through? Why is it only me who's going through this right now? But we also figure out that everybody in life struggles, but they have different struggles. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Everybody is, struggles are inevitable, but we all suffer in the same way in different ways. It's a very difficult concept to grasp, because no matter which way we do suffer, we are all connected through that suffering, because nobody is subject to not being ignorant of things that they do. So, big question was why. See, that's one of the pictures where the police would drag out the prostitutes with their babies. And I found this picture to be really interesting, because I didn't notice it until I actually made the slide with it, that these were just some kids that were sitting by the rubble in World War II. And I realized the coincidence that it happened to be two girls and one guy. So practically it's like Jeanne and Marie and Maurice, they almost have the mind of children because they're that ignorant to things going around them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Another big thing for Marie was, who am I? And she constantly was at a crossroads. She wanted to help Jeanne, but then again she hated her, but then again she also helped Jeanne give birth to her baby, yet she hated doing it all the time. And so she constantly could not figure out what she wanted in life, and that proves her ignorance to just not understanding herself. And ignorance is also something that comes with young age, and as we grow, we learn more and more about the things of life that we didn't used to understand as kids, and we learn that our actions have consequences. And as young kids, we don't understand that all the time. We have to be taught that, and unfortunately we have to go through things sometimes to understand that and grasp that. And so a big claim that I am making for this novel is ignorance is inevitable. We are born, we do not know that our actions have consequences. We don't know until we do something or experience something that it's either going to be bad, good, it's going to have a positive effect, it's going to have a negative effect. So that's the biggest thing. And if I were to include this in the BL curriculum, I honestly probably would say this wouldn't be necessarily a good one to include, because it does favor more to the girl side, and I think the guys get a little bored with it. There were a couple lull parts here and there, but overall it was pretty interesting. Like I said, the ending was lacking a little bit, but I did enjoy it a lot, and it just kind of proved to me that we all endure things in different ways, but it also connects us and can make us stronger as a whole. And so basically with this slide, inevitability, we're young, and what was once, I used the example for things for World War II, what was once a toy tank becomes an actual World War II gun once we get older. We notice how serious things are when we get older, because when we're little we don't think anything about it when we're playing with toy guns or whatever. But then when we get older and realize that there's actually wars going on, people are getting killed because of this, then it becomes a lot more serious. Something I found that was interesting was when the war was going on, Marie was not very affected by it. She, or at least the author had her just talk in very short sentences. Bombs were dropping, rocks were flying everywhere, people were dying, there were bodies on the street. She acted very unemotional to everything, like it was almost surreal to her. She didn't understand that those people were part of the human race. She thought that she was just secluded on her own because she was in so much of a higher society than they were. But Jeanne, she was the one that could really notice that when the German soldiers came to the brothels, they saw like how desperate the men were and everything, and so they both experienced war, but in two totally different ways. And so I thought that it was very interesting.